When it comes to conservatives and the environment, it's often seen as a bit of an oxymoron because if you really look at the conservatives, they really haven't given a damn about the environment. However, when you look at like where they're split into, there's really four different factions. First of all, you've got the absolute anti net zero people who don't believe in climate change, in any of this green technology stuff, anything like that. So that's one. The next step is they do sort of believe in climate change, but they don't, or at least are hesitant about adopting green policies or green ideas because they have business concerns, or they don't think you know, there'll be quote rolling blackouts. This is what you've seen with many of the responses to the stuff Ed Miliband is going to be saying. Oh well, Ed Miliband's going to cause rolling blackouts, etc., etc. Then you get onto the other people who are really positive, who do get the environmental concerns, but also have business concerns when it comes to sort of adopting them. Now, you might say, well, what's the difference between these two? Well, this is sort of the almost the middle ground. They're more in favor of a lot more of these green policies than, of course, the previous faction was, but they're still not 100% there. They're sort of like, you know, 60-ish percent, they're over 50% for a lot of the stuff, but there's just some stuff that holds them back, really. And then, of course, you get the actual green Tories. And these are, as we said, if you've got the group far right over here, which is like anti-net zero, anti everything you can possibly think about the environment. Green Tories are whole hog. Chris Skidmore is a perfect example of this. Let's go full hole into the net zero future, the green revolution that this can do. And to be honest, and to be fair, that is actually sort of pretty good. Those types of Tories, when it comes to sort of the environment and net zero, and as I've said before, Chris Skidmore gets it when it goes to the net zero stuff. He gets it when it comes to that green transitional future stuff. So that is, tends to be, very, very good. But this is sort of where the difference becomes. It's a wide spectrum of these different beliefs fitted into a party, and moreover, though, the party has become more and more drifting to that anti-net zero skeptical side, or that the after side of, well, we're a bit really hesitant about this because we don't want to damage our growth, or we don't want to damage UK businesses, or create rolling blackouts. That's where the party has gone. But there are still very few, but they are still there, green Tories. And this has now led to a situation where the Conservatives themselves are completely, utterly confused when it comes to the environment. And if you want a perfect example of this, look at what was going on during the whole water treatment stuff, the sewage outflow stuff. Now, why did that happen? What ended up happening where, bear in mind, this became an almost annual occurrence that we were seeing these constant news stories every summer about dumping, sewage going in the river. What was going on? Why did that happen? Well, it was Brexit. Mostly because we left the European Union at that time. They weren't under sort of the European environmental codes, meant that they could sort of get away with a lot of this stuff. They pulled back on testing sort of rivers to a point where the testing is like, well, we'll see if we can test a river maybe in 5 years time, when we get round to it. And this is what really sort of caused, I think, a lot of the big sort of backlash when it came to sort of the Conservatives, especially over the environmental concerns, because you would think with most of their constituents being in rural seats, rural areas, you would think that they would be really, really big when it comes to sort of, environmental concerns or looking after the environment or things like that, but not really. Unfortunately, a lot of that side, as we've talked about, where they're like, business concerns, most of them are talking about farmers. There is a very, very powerful farming lobby within the Conservative group that wants there to be a more prioritization of environmental, or at least the denying of environmental stuff when it comes to sort of farmland or um, you know, looking at farmland when it comes to flooding or things like that. Um, you know, most of a lot of flooding, when you look at it, is actually caused by farmers. um, Especially when it comes to, and I know I'm going to get a lot of pushback against that, but you know, look it up. Um, when it comes to sort of, you know, the creating of like, you know, anti flood defenses or anything like that, tends to be sort of very highly focused in a lot of these, you know, rural areas around farmland, not around, you know, people's homes or things like that. You know? So that has been a big sort of, you know, concern, an ongoing concern. The other point is why a lot of these environmentalists have sort of gone this way. NIMBYs, you know, the biggest anti, you know, green conservatives are, you know, NIMBYs to their core, and all of a sudden they will shift over to not fully to the like becoming a green Tory, but they'll just shift over the line and say, okay, not really sure we need this, you know, wind farm. I mean, just think of the birds. Just think of the birds. Like, just think of the all of a sudden caring about the birds. um, or you know, they'll suddenly care about something to do with the environment, just to stop these things from happening. Um, Not only this as well, but there are what are referred to in the Green Party as watermelons, as they call themselves. You know, green on the outside, red on the inside, meaning that they are maybe sort of vote green, but really vote, you know, Labour a lot more. There's sort of the green blue Tory, which most of sort of this side tend to be. Maybe they'll switch between their vote between, well, whatever happens to their environmental concerns at that time. Do they favour some of the green policies? Do they favour some of the Tory policies? But there has been a very, very much push between the change of this. It was David Cameron that brought in, when he sort of came into the party, a lot of these push for green changes and sort of wanting this stuff. You saw this once again, a bit of an advancement under Boris Johnson, but you also saw a lot more of the pushback against these policies by the sort of the anti side. And over time, you know, you end up again with Rishi Sunak, pretty much embarrassing royalty, where you had Prince William at the UN, you know, doing his Earthshot Award for like, you know, environmental, like, you know, businesses and ideas to help improve the environment. Meanwhile, out comes Rishi Sunak and pretty much cans a ton of, you know, net zero stuff. Yeah, fascinating point. Made you know, pretty much embarrassed royalty on the world stage, and you don't do that if you're if you're a prime minister. But it just goes to show you just how confused the Conservatives are. Even now, you can see mostly in the Conservative movement. We'll just go over to this on Conservative Home, and they are massively against you know, net zero stuff. But this is one of the things you get here. Um, so Will finishes off this article by saying, should we stick to Sunak's balancing act rather than lurching between environmental extremes, pro measures to improve the natural world, reduce emissions, and preserve our inheritance for the next generation, but realistic about the costs and, of course, public support? We cannot bankrupt ourselves pursuing net zero. Fuels must give way to reactors. It is not easy being green. But we are a country or we are nothing. And England, of course, is the most beautiful country in the world. Again, a bit patriotic about that there, Will, but you know, and again, that just goes to show you how confused they are about just the environmental stuff on this as well. You know, oh well, we want to really maintain the balancing act that Sunak did. Sunak didn't maintain a balancing act. Sunak was very, very anti environmental. You know, he canned a lot of the net zero stuff, not for cost, but because he thought, oh, maybe there wasn't public support because of the by-election that happened in Uxbridge, based on the whole ULEZ stuff. And again, when you look at public support, if you are looking at people's polling concerns, very more often than not, the fifth most cited concern is environmental stuff. So if you are again a Tory and you're wanting to get back in power, maybe you'd be paying a bit more attention to people's, overly, increasing concern about the environment. Again, it just goes to show you how confused they are when it comes to environmental stuff. But it's nothing new. We've talked about how confused they are before, or not just this topic, but many topics before. So, and long may that continue. And oh boy, um, it's going to get even more confused. And you get to a point where you get them just going, well, we'll support this idea, but not this idea. But why are we supporting this idea and we don't support this idea? And yeah, honestly, policy wise, when it comes to the environment, they're going to end up in an absolute mess when it comes to it. But there you go. So let me know what you think down below. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.